International news, where Pope Francis is celebrating an outdoor mass with millions of people in the capital, Manila. An estimated 3 million people had already gathered at the resort park 2 hours before the mass began. 20 years back, more than 5 million people attended a mass celebrated here by Pope John Paul II. The Vatican said Pope Francis would dedicate the service in part to the victims of Typhoon Haiyan, which devastated the country in 2013. The mass will be the Pope's final full day in the Philippines, where there are 80 million Catholics, concluding his 6-day tour of Asia. According to local media, Philippine officials have estimated that as many as 6 million people may attend the mass this afternoon. Before the final mass, the Pope held the morning meetings with religious leaders and young people at the University of Santo Tomas, which is the biggest Catholic university in Asia. Pope Francis opened his meeting with over 20,000 students by remembering the 27-year-old woman who had died during his visit to Tacloban. A weeping 12-year-old Philippine girl broke down and wept profusely in front of the pontiff, asking how God could allow children to become prostitutes. Pope Francis hugged her for a few seconds and appealed for everyone to show more compassion. The Pope later discarded most of his prepared speech that he was due to give in English, reverting back to his native Spanish to deliver an impromptu and heartfelt response.
A delegation of 6 United States legislators arrived in Havana in the first congressional visit since an historic policy shift between the U.S. and Cuba in December. The group is made up of 6 Democrats, including Senator Richard Durbin from Illinois, Senator Patrick Leahy from Vermont, Senator Davy Stabenow from Michigan, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island, Representative Chris Van Hollen from Maryland, and Representative Peter Welch from Vermont. The leaders are expected to meet with Cuban government officials, other ambassadors to Cuba, and Cardinal Jaime Ortega. The senators and congressmen will return to the U.S. tomorrow. Brazil and the Netherlands recalled their ambassadors from Indonesia and expressed fury that Jakarta defied their pleas and executed 2 of their citizens, along with 4 other drug defenders by firing squad. Brazil says it is outraged by the execution of one of its citizens in Indonesia for drug trafficking. Marco Archer Cardoso Moreira, aged 53, was arrested in 2003 after police at Jakarta airport found 13.4 kg of cocaine hidden in his bag glitter. Brazil says he was the first Brazilian national to be executed abroad, and he was warned it will damage relations. 5 other convicts from Indonesia, Malawi, Nigeria, Vietnam, and the Netherlands were executed. Convicted of drugs charges, they faced a firing squad in Central Java province shortly after midnight local times. 5 were executed on the island of Nusa Kambangan, and the other one, a Vietnamese woman, was executed in small central Javanese town of Boelali. Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff said in a statement that she was outraged and dismayed. Ms. Rousseff said relations between the 2 countries have been affected. She added the Brazilian ambassador to Jakarta has been recalled for consultations. The Netherlands have recalled its ambassador after Foreign Minister Bert Continents called the execution of the Dutch citizen King Kim So, aged 52, and acceptable denial of the human dignity and integrity. Indonesia has some of the world's toughest drug laws. The country resumed executions in 2013 after an unofficial 4-year moratorium. The Afghan President's office has launched an investigation after it emerged that the President Ashraf Ghani's nominee for agriculture portfolio is on Interpol's most wanted list. Interpol's website says Mohammad Yaqub Heydari is wanted in Estonia for large-scale tax evasion dating back to 2003. A spokesman of the President's office said the office was unaware Heydari had the legal problems but was investigating. Heydari said he was on the list but was victim of a political conspiracy. He told the Reuters news agency that the taxes were owed not by him but by a person who bought a company from him that did business in Estonia. Police in Niger fired tear gas to disperse a banned opposition demonstration in the capital Niamey, a day after deadly riots erupted over a publication of the France's Charlie Hebdo magazine of a cartoon depicting Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Around 300 demonstrators gathered for a march in the parliament but were scattered into surrounding streets and were attempting to regroup, an AFP correspondent reported. A police source said 7 protesters, including a former minister, were arrested. Meanwhile, Zambians are preparing to go to the polls on January the 28th to choose a new leader. The The presidential election was called after former President Michael Satta's death. 11 candidates are making last-minute efforts to win over the electorates, promising more jobs, better service delivery and improving the economy, which seems to be stagnating despite recent impressive growth. Some voters are still weighing the options before committing to one candidate. Others are already wearing their hearts on their sleeves. The ruling Patriotic Front candidate Edgar Lungu is popular in the low-income compounds of Lusaka. Many there want him to finish the job his predecessor started.
Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro returned home to a warm welcome by supporters after a multi-country foreign trip. Maduro wrapped up a tour that took him to China, Russia, Iran, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Algeria in what OPEC delegates described as a diplomatic push by Venezuela and Iran for an OPEC oil output cut. Hundreds of supporters lined the streets waving flags and balloons as Maduro drove a bus through Caracas to celebrate his return. In a speech to supporters, he said much of the trip dealt with exploring sources of financing and investment. After meeting with Russia's President Vladimir Putin, Maduro proposed a meeting later in the month with Mexico's President Enrique Pena Nieto to discuss a slump in crude oil prices. Major oil producers, including Russia and Venezuela, have been pushing for output cuts to boost prices, but OPEC has shown no signs of reversing its November decision to maintain production levels and instead allow the market to balance itself. Crowds of demonstrators marched in the nation's capital in a show of support for law enforcement across the country and to speak out against what they say is an anti-police climate. Supporters wearing symbolic blue participated in the Sea of Blue rally at Washington's National Law Enforcement Officials Memorial and ended at the Capitol, where speakers addressed the crowd. Many carried placards that read "Blue Lives Matter." Other Sea of Blue rallies have been held in Las Vegas, Nevada and Cleveland, Ohio. The show of support is being staged against the backdrop of a national debate over the tactics and attitudes of police towards minority groups.
Well, one person is dead and 2 are injured after a shooting at a mall in Melbourne, Florida. The injured have been removed from the mall and taken to nearby hospital for treatment. Police said they believe the situation is now contained but did not immediately say whether the shooter was dead. Earlier, they had said the shooter was contained after gunfire erupted at Melbourne Square Mall on Florida's east coast. Police said all 3 people involved in the shooting were found in the same part of the mall. The mall would remain closed for the day as police continue to search stores to make sure everyone has gotten out safely. Well, thousands of farmers and consumer rights activists gathered at the German Chancellery to protest against the rise of the industrial-scale agriculture and genetically modified foods. The protest, under the headline "We Are Fed Up," coincided with the start of Europe's biggest agriculture fair, the International Green Week, and is one of the largest annual protests in Germany. The protesters said they blamed the German government for not doing enough to support traditional farmers and investing too much in industrialized agriculture. Farmers said the government needed to step up in the start supporting traditional agriculture. The European Union is currently negotiating a free trade agreement with the United States known as the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. Minnesota adventurer Lonnie Derby completed a solo climb of the Alaska's Mount McKinley, becoming the first person to climb North America's tallest peak in January. The summit shows the climber's breathtaking view of the snow-covered mountain range stretching for miles. Derby can be hard and short of the breath and emotional as he takes in the views around him. This is Derby's 4th attempt at climbing the peak in the middle of winter. Mount McKinley is at Denali National Park and is 20,320 feet high. Most climbers of McKinley make the attempt from late April to early July when snowpack, daylight and temperatures are most favorable. Well, world's leading menswear brands have gathered at the Italian fashion capital of Milan to represent their new autumn and winter collections since the start of the Milan Men's Fashion Week 2015. A total of 23 brands, including Zegna and Jimmy Choo, previewed their latest autumn-winter collections for 2015 during Saturday's show, which displayed a variety of colors and patterns. According to its official schedule, as many as 70 world fashion brands will publish their newest collections during the 4-day show. Fashion watchers can expect to see various catwalk shows presented by 39 brands, including Prada, Giorgio Armani and Fendi, as well as hundreds of other side events during the week. The semi-annual Milan Fashion Week is one of the big 4 international fashion weeks, the others being Paris, London and New York. The United States has urged Pakistan and Afghanistan to step up counterterrorism cooperation. This has been stated by U.S. State Department's Deputy Spokesperson Mary Harf in Washington while reacting to reports of arrest of 5 persons in Afghanistan reportedly involved in terror attack on Army Public School Peshawar last month. She said Islamabad and Kabul need to work together to hold accountable those elements who plotted the terrorist attacks. The U.S. official said the United States designated Fazlullah a global terrorist last week and would cooperate with Pakistan in bringing him and other terrorists to justice.